Welcome friends once again to the class. Actually, in the morning I had uploaded one video, but in that video, the video was regarding this only, but in that particular video there was no audio. Okay, so I had to actually delete that video because there was no audio in it. Okay, so let us see what does it mean. Now you must have seen that in your GS. Okay, GS economy or even GS political issues, social issues. Everywhere in GS writing you keep on saying that after the LPG reforms of 1991 the economic inequality has widened. Okay, the economic inequality has increased ever since the LPG reforms of 1991. So let me tell you what is this. Now from 1991 to 2014, during those days the government used to release the data. During those days the government used to release the data which clearly suggests that 96% of the Indians had their incomes increased. Okay, so from 1991 to 2014 this includes PV Narasimha Rao government, Atal Bihari Vajpayee government and Manmohan Singh government. Okay, so three governments are included during this period. Now during this period 96% of the Indians had their incomes increased and 4% of Indians had their incomes decreased. Okay, so amongst these 96% Indians whose income had increased, 17% were such that their incomes had increased 2.5x. Okay, and 79% were such that their incomes had increased 1.6x. Okay, so these are some of the figures which various non-government organizations also keep on telling. Now as the 17% people had their incomes increased 2.5x and 79% had only got an increase in the income 1.6x. If you adjust it for inflation, during those days, then you will find that this increase is actually 2.1x for 17% people. Adjusted for inflation I am saying, and adjusted for inflation it is 1.2x. Okay, for 79% people. So such was the scenario from 1991 to 2014. Okay, so 4% Indians had their incomes decreased and 96% had their incomes increased. Among those 96%, 17% were such whose incomes had increased 2.5x and adjusted with inflation it was 2.1x, and 79% had their incomes increased by 1.6x, which adjusted for inflation accounts for 1.2x increase. Okay, now if you look at this carefully, so 2.1x increase and 1.2x increase, so there was income inequality was rising. These are approximate figures. Okay, it is possible that amongst these 17%, some of them would be such persons whose income had increased 5.1x. Okay, such persons might also be there amongst these 17%, but we are not going to talk about that. We are just talking, we are getting an overall scenario. Okay, now what after 2014? After 2014, 83% of Indians had their incomes decreased. Why I have crossed this, I will also tell you regarding that. That why I have crossed this particular slide like this. I will tell you regarding that. But first of all, listen to what I am saying. So after 2014, 83% of Indians had their incomes reduced, which was reduced to 0.7%. Okay, and 17% of Indians had their incomes increased, which was amongst this 17%, 5% were such that their incomes had increased 5x, and adjusted with inflation this accounts for 3x increase. Okay, adjusted with inflation, and adjusted with inflation this accounts for 1.5x increase. Okay, so these are approximate figures. So that's how after 2014 the income of 83% of the Indians has reduced. Various factors are accredited to it. Many factors are accredited to it, such as rise in fuel price, GST, decline of MSME. Okay, such factors are there. So these things are there. So why I have crossed this particular slide? The reason is that the government does not want to. The government does not want after 2014 that people should talk regarding all these things. Okay, because it is visible from the actions of the government. Okay, so obviously UPSC is a government exam, and as it is a government exam, so if the government itself is busy spinning lies, okay, talking lies always, so such If a government itself is speaking lies, then what can you do? You will also have to speak lies in the in the answer sheets, right? So you do not have to discuss the data after 2014. You have to just write one statement over there. No need to specifically specify this after 2014, post 2014 data. No need to specify separately. Just write one statement in your answer sheet while writing the GS answer that after LPG reforms of 1991, the income inequality has increased, the income gap has widened after 1991 LPG reforms. That's what you have to say in your answer sheets. Now, what was the scenario pre 1991? If I talk about up to 1980s, okay, up to 1980s, the scenario was such that there was equal increase, okay, equal increase in the incomes, equal increase in the income of labor also, and professionals also, okay. So laborers and professionals, both of them had their incomes increased, but equally, almost equally, okay, almost, I am saying almost equally up to 1980s. After 1991, this particular gap has widened, because if you look at the figures, as I already told to you, that 96% Indians income had increased, 4% of Indians income had declined. So amongst those 96%, 17% were such, if adjusted with inflation, 2.1x increase in income, and 79% were such that if adjusted for inflation, 1.2x increase in income. Okay, so these are 1991 to 2014 data. And after 2014, 83% of Indians had their income reduced, okay, and 17% Indians had their income increased. Now amongst the 17%, 5% were such that their incomes had increased 3x adjusted with inflation, and 12% were such that their incomes were increased by 1.5x adjusted with inflation. So such is the scenario, and the government does not want to talk about all these things. So you have to basically no need to remember this particular data. Only thing you must keep in your mind that you also have to remember certain facts, right? Because I don't just want you to qualify the exam. I also want to make you know the ground reality, what is going on in the country, okay? So merely qualifying UPSC will not make you a good civil servant. You must know how the government is functioning at the ground level. So that's why I told you this particular data. But this data should not be mentioned in your answer sheets, because it will appear to be very much against the government, and the government is very what does the government do? It ferociously, okay, the government ferociously attacks those who criticize it, okay. This particular government ferociously attacks those who criticize it. So instead of doing all this stuff, you obviously the examiner might get angry after seeing this data. So obviously you should not remember it, but keep this thing in mind that this has happened actually, okay. So thank you very much. That's what is the meaning of economic inequality being rising after 1991 LPG reforms. So that's what is the meaning of all this stuff. You guys keep on writing all these things in the GS answers, but many of you don't even understand what is the meaning of this. So I just told you, okay, I just told you that what is the meaning of this. So thank you very much.